Well, hello once again, all my YouTube browsers and subscribers, and thanks to you all again for returning here to Classic Dirt Bike TV. Now, in this up and coming video, we're going to take a stroll through the racing paddock at the 2015 Classic Motocross Des Nations. It was held at that Bennett's Hill racetrack in Reading in September of that year. Now, you may have already seen a few of these bikes actually racing on the racetrack when I posted video footage from this race event just recently. So this time round we're going to get up close and personal and have a closer look at some of those European vintage iron. So I do hope you enjoy this next video. So without any further delay, let's just jump straight into our first machine. Okay, our first bike is a Radek Zavadnik's 400 Jawa, which is quite a rare bike to see here in the UK, although that was the beauty of these type of European motorcycle racing events, that you got to see these other rarer bikes that you'd otherwise not be able to view at your local or vintage race meeting. Now, Radek was racing this particular bike for the Czech Republic in the 35 plus racing category. So if you watched part one of the racing from this event, you may have already seen this bike in action on the track. Now, for me personally, I've seen many of those old Jawa ESO 4-stroke bikes in the past, but I have to say that this is one of the first piston port 2-strokers that I've come across, but a quite nice looking old race bike, and very quick on the track as well, as you'll no doubt find out if you watched the racing from this event. Now, I think these Jawas were still using the older steel tanks on these bikes, but that 250 motor certainly looks like it could do a good job sitting in that all steel Jawa chassis. But a nice classic, that's for sure, and just one of the many interesting bikes that I captured over that weekend, although it has to be said that many of them were CZ bikes, but this is a nice piece of Jawa 250 vintage iron from Radek Zavadnik of the Czech Republic. Now, next up, another nice Jawa race bike, and this is Jiri Bubol's 400 Jawa twin shocker, and again another quite nice bike from the Czech Republic racing team. But as you'd imagine, the Czechs had brought with them transporter loads of these Jawa and CZ bikes, and you could never question their commitment to this Motocross Des Nations event, as they brought plenty bikes and the riders to race them. But again, another different kind of Jawa motor from the previous bike, and I'd like to tell you more about this particular bike, although you can just imagine me in my broadest Scottish accent trying to ask a Czechoslovakian owner just exactly what year, make and model his bike was, and to tell you the truth, I did try, but it was a bit of a disaster for all concerned, so you'll just have to make do with just looking at these bikes. But again, another nice old Jawa 400 from the Czechoslovakian racing camp. Now, next up, the first of the many CZ bikes that I came across over the course of the 2 days, and this is Pavel Ruspells 250 CZ. But if there was one thing for me that stood out about the entire weekend at this Classic Motocross Des Nations, was the amount of CZ bikes that were in the paddock. There were literally hundreds. And if you were into your old CZs and visited this event, you'd have been in CZ heaven with the amount of bikes that were on display. Although one of the things that did stand out for me was many of these old CZs seem to have had a lot of trick parts fitted to them, and for as many as there were in the paddock. I never really came across a bike that remotely looked like an old original bike from back in the day, but it was still good to see all the different types and all the other upgrades the riders had bolted on to their particular machines. And even when I did eventually hear a few of them fire up, they certainly never sounded anything like the noisy, rattly CZ motors that I was used to in the past, because they all sounded so good and almost as nice as a Japanese machine does when it's first kicked into life. But again, this is another Czech Republic cracker from Pavel Ruspells, who rode this bike in the 50 plus class at this event, and like I said, just one of the hundreds of Czechoslovakian dirt bikes that were parked in the paddock. Now next up, another nice CZ, and this is Karel Kozak's 360 CZ twin porter, and yes, you guessed it, another bike from the Czech Republic. But again, these 360s were very quick machines, single cylinder of course, two-stroke with that twin port cylinder with those two exhaust headers that normally would have led to two individual silencers that ran down each side of the bike, although in this case it's gone into a single pipe on the left hand side of the bike. But a quite popular choice for vintage and classic racing, and a bit more powerful than its 250cc little brother, but a quick and reasonably light two-stroke racer. Now Karel also looks like he's kept the original Jikov carburetor on his 360. It's not everybody that likes these Jikov carbs, and many riders tend to swap them for a Mikuni or something a bit more modern. But that besides, this is still another nice twin shot racing, and be sure to take a look at this bike on the track in the racing footage that I've already posted from this event, or maybe catch it again in part 2, which will be posted shortly. But anyhow, that's Karel Kozak's very nice 360 CZ twin porter. Okay, next up, another nice little bike here, and this is one of the Dutch riders. This is Herman Lunnen's 250 Bultaco Matisse. Now, I'm not exactly sure, but I think this is an older 1965 or possibly even 1967 bike, and just another example of how the famous Rickman brothers of Don and Derek Rickman, who were building these frame kits in the 1960s to suit just about any conceivable type of engine, and a Spanish two-stroke Bultaco motor's been shoehorned into this particular chassis. But these were still good little bikes, and made quite good little scrambles machines, and were quite light as I remember, and reasonably quick, powered by this 250 Bultaco power plant that had that over the top of the motor exhaust system, which of course kept it out of harm's way and away from stones and such that would otherwise damage it. But I suppose these weren't the fastest bikes on the planet, having just that 250cc engine and maybe somewhat limited power, but these were more fun bikes really, that you could do absolutely anything with, and they were just as good at doing scrambles or trials, or even just using them for a bit of green laning. But this is a very nice example of one of these Rickman Bultacos, and quite a rare bike as well, and again not a bike that you see too often at a scramble race event these days, but it's still good to know that there are still a few out there still in circulation. But once again, something a bit different, and that's Herman Lunnen's 250 Rickman bull tackle. Okay, coming up now, another old classic here, and this is Wolfgang Buttner's old 500 4-stroke Husqvarna racer, and Wolfgang raced this particular bike in the 66 plus age group class at this MXDN event. Now you can see here that Wolfgang's Husky's been through the motocross wars with all the dings and dents and repairs that's been done on this bike, but she's still going strong despite that, and I have to say this is the very first time that I've seen an old Swedish Husqvarna powered by one of these older 4-stroke motors, and it's certainly not an engine that I'm familiar with, but it's a big lump, that's for sure, and it'll more than likely supply plenty grunt when this bike takes to the track. Although having said that, the motor does look quite similar to the old Jawa 4-stroke engines, and I'll wager that this motor is also being fueled by methanol, which seems to be the preferred gas to power these big long stroking 4-stroke motors these days. But then again, some owners still do prefer to use regular gas, as it makes the motor much more manageable, and it's certainly not as fiery. But another nice old classic, and quite rare to see one of these Husqvarnas with that big 4-stroke engine in the chassis, so look out for the racing from this Classic Motocross Des Nations event in part 2, and you may catch a glimpse of this particular big bruiser in action on the racetrack. But certainly a genuine old warhorse without a doubt, and it may not win any prizes in the concourse competition, but I'll bet that this old beauty can certainly fly around the racetrack. Now this was another lovely bike. This is Frenchman Pascal Dronie's 500 BSA that he raced in the 50 plus class. Now these old BSAs are hugely popular as vintage dirt bikes, and this example of Pascal's is certainly a little cracker. Now probably not your standard BSA Victor, as it looks like it's got some very trick upgrades fitted on it with different front and rear suspensions, and maybe even different front and rear brake hubs, but a very nice bike all the same, and this one is also very quick on the track as well. Now powered of course by this tried and trusted BSA 500 motor, which not only powered some of BSA's road going machines back in the day, but is now still being used in these Victor scramblers to great success. And although these 500 4-strokers might be considered old school by today's modern standards, they're still perfect and well suited to this kind of motocross role. Now I'm not entirely sure that Pascal's frame on his particular bike's an original item, because it looks distinctly like the many reproduction chassis that you can buy for these BSAs, and as you can see, these chrome plated ones are very popular among the vintage BSA racing fraternity. But a quite tall back end on this bike due to Pascal fitting these quite lengthy Dutch-made Riger shocks. But nevertheless, a very nice example of a classic BSA Victor. That's Pascal Dronie's 500. Now next up, another nice classic from the Netherlands, and this lovely Jawa 250 two-stroker is Yos Verwich's old classic. Now when I first came across this bike, I immediately thought that this was an extremely rare machine, and it was really brought along to add a bit of glamour to the paddock, because it looked just like a fully original machine, and it was just put on display to let passers-by have a look at it. But I was very surprised to actually see this bike out on the track in the 70 plus class shortly after I grabbed these video clips. Now, I have to say I haven't really a clue as to what year this bike will be, but it certainly looks like a 1960s machine, and again quite rare, I'll wager. But fair play to Yos from the Netherlands for bringing this bike along to this Classic Motocross Des Nations event, and for racing the bike on the track, because it certainly looks like it's been taken straight out of some private collection somewhere and then brought straight to the track. But of course, a single cylinder two-stroke motor with the twin port exhaust headers, similar of course to the CZ twin porters of their time, but such a nice little bike, and it was a bit of a shame to actually get it covered in dirt, really. And but take a look at part one of the racing video from this Classic Motocross Des Nations event, and you'll see Yos and this little 250 strutting their stuff out there on the racetrack. Now, once again, a pair of twin exhaust tailpipes on this particular Jawa, with a pipe running down each side of the bike, as of course per the old twin port CZs of their time. But these featured machines in this video are just a small sample of the many vast and varied dirt bikes that I captured at this event, and I may actually showcase some more of them on my channel in a future video. But that's another very nice looking bike. That's the Dutchman Yos Verwich's very nice Jawa 250 twin port classic. Okay, just to finish this first paddock walk around of the 2015 Classic Motocross Des Nations meeting, we're going to take a look at Frenchman Guy Froment's 250 CZ. Now, this bike was certainly one of the nicest CZs that I came across over the course of the two-day event, and as I said, there were an abundance of these old Czechoslovakian race bikes, but this is certainly the one that caught my eye. Now, again, another very nicely tricked up CZ with that drilled alloy back brake torque arm and chain guide. And as I've mentioned in previous videos regarding these old CZs, there's certainly no shortage of upgraded parts that you can buy for these bikes, so you can do quite a lot with them to improve on the original bike's design. But this particular machine of Guy's is a very nice looking machine. Okay, it's probably nothing near to what an original CZ bike may have looked like, but I've personally no problem with that at all. For me, it's all about keeping these older bikes running and out on the racetrack, and if that means fitting non-original parts on it, then that's fine by me, because you can see Guys fitted these alloy triple clamps and bar risers on his bike, although the risers are probably just there to make the riding position that little bit better for his particular height. But these exhausts are again a modern replacement to the original pipe, but very good quality and easy enough to obtain from those many CZ parts supply shops. And the chances are that Guys also fitted more trick parts into the clutch and gearbox of this 250 motor, and I can see that the old Jikov carburetors been changed for a much more modern Mikuni. But as I said, a very nice looking motorcycle and a little gem among the hundreds of CZs that littered the paddock at this event, and I'd love to show you each and every one, but that would make this video run into hours and not just minutes. But I do hope you've enjoyed the few that I've picked out here, and as I say, we'll maybe showcase a few more in a future video here on my YouTube channel. Well, I hope you enjoyed that very brief walk through the racing paddock of the 2015 Classic Motocross Des Nation, and some very nice European vintage iron on display there. So coming up in my next video, you're going to get another chance to see some of those bikes in action on the track when I post part 2 of the racing footage from this event. So I hope you'll all rejoin me to take a look at that. So until next time, I hope everybody stays safe and well until we all meet up once more again to take a look at Classic Dirt Bike TV.